Hi guys, welcome back to this channel and to this video. Today I want to talk about the gates of hell, several different entryways to hell or the underworld, and a few other things. So enjoy this video. My name is Laura from Shamanic Self at shamanicself.com, and let's just dig into this right now. So the gates of hell is probably something that I've mentioned, I don't know, on and off since what, March, April on other platforms. I had a fewer shorter videos on other social media platforms on it. And basically the gist of it was how the gates of hell actually exist. Now they're in Turkmenistan and they actually are called the gates of hell. What are the gates of hell exactly? So just to kind of read from an article here. It's a fiery crater that has been burning in the Karakum Desert since 1971. And in the hot, expansive Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan, near the 350-person village of Darvaza, there is a hole 230 feet wide that has been on fire for over 50 years. Though technically called the Darvaza gas crater, locals know the crater as the Gates of Hell. Its fiery glow can be seen from miles away. The Gates of Hell crater was created in 1971 when a Soviet drilling rig accidentally punched into a massive underground natural gas cavern, causing the ground to collapse and the entire drilling rig to fall in. Having punctured a pocket of gas, poisonous fumes began leaking at an alarming rate. To head off a potential environmental catastrophe, the Soviets set the hole alight, figuring it would stop burning within a few weeks. Decades later, so right now we're 5 decades later, the fiery pit is still going strong. The Soviet drilling rig is believed to still be down there somewhere on the other side of the gates of hell. Despite the crater's foreboding name and ever-present flames, people still trek into the desert to witness the site in all its blazing glory. And it's actually become a popular place for wild camping, all of those things. Now, it does appear that the current president of Turkmenistan wants to actually put the fire out. He announced that in 2022, which from this point is around 2 years ago, because it was like January 2022. But it has not yet happened. And so if we just kind of see everything as a symbol for something, I do think this Gates of Hell is very symbolic of the several different entryways to hell. Turkmenistan is a country that is, I believe, is it right above one of the Irans or Iraqs? Let me just look it up real quick. First I thought it was somewhere in former Soviet Union. Okay, so it's kind of like right around Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Iran. So it's in between Iran, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan. And it's also right next to that lake where Azerbaijan, Georgia, and all those other countries are. So Turkmenistan is a country that's run by a dictator. And at one point, I'm not sure if it was that current dictator or if there was a dictator before this one that they have right now. One of their presidents actually demanded that the people only have white cars. That is exactly the country. If you've heard of that one, that's Turkmenistan. Meaning if you had a different colored car, you had to either get rid of it or turn it into a white car. So there's only white cars in Turkmenistan, at least that's how it used to be. And it's basically just all for show. I mean, I had a friend, so I met this one girl recently. She took a tour in Turkmenistan. You can only obtain a visa to Turkmenistan if you're not a resident or citizen of Turkmenistan, which I've also met a girl who actually came from Turkmenistan, but she lived in one of the Arab countries. I think she lived in Dubai or Oman, one of those two. And she basically would never go back there, from my understanding. But I did meet a different person. I met an American girl who basically went to Turkmenistan recently this year. I think it was March 2023. And you cannot get a visa without a tourist group. So you need to be part of an actual guided tour. You can't do this on your own at all. I mean, you could do it in other countries, but not Turkmenistan. And obviously you have to pay for that. So if it's an organized tour, it's going to cost a few $1,000s from my understanding. And on this guided tour, you're only shown what they want to show you. And so with her specifically, I do think they went to the gates of hell. I do think they went to this crater. But other than that, she said it was a very eerie experience to be there. Her entire group was around 10 or 15 people, something like that. She says it had just opened up again. So keep in mind, this is like March 2023. I guess they had some restrictions in place beforehand. So they were one of the first tours again to go there. And they did witness a wedding in Turkmenistan. And that was the only authentic thing, she said, that she actually saw on her tour there. Everything else was literally just there for the tourists to get a good impression of the country. Obviously, the image of the dictator or the president was all over. You do have that in other countries too. So you definitely have that in Iran. I'm not sure about Iraq, actually, but you do have that in a lot of these countries that have a dictator, where you have this overblown face, this banner of the president all over, so that people worship them nonstop, or that they're always being reminded of them. So that's pretty much what Turkmenistan was in a nutshell. She said it felt very deserted, almost uncomfortable in one of the larger cities there, because it was pretty much, there's no one there. It was a bit weird the way she described it. It was almost like there was this city where no one really lives, or if they do, they only come there for the tourists so that they can show the tourists, oh yeah, we do live here. But basically everyone's just afraid to speak out. Now there was this one wedding experience where people were happy. It was a celebration, it was a party, and they did drink alcohol and everything. So that was that one experience where she was like, okay, that was more authentic. But yeah, other than that, I guess it was a pretty eerie experience, and I think she was there for about a week. So these are the gates of hell. Why is this important? Because they're already kind of giving you something, right? They're already telling you, oh, the gates of hell exist. And this could be a possible entryway. There are several other entryways, which I want to discuss in this video as well. Entryways to hell, entryways to the underground, entryways to the underworld. But what you have to kind of think about is this supposedly exploded or was formed in 1971, which was also during the same time you had the Cold War and you had all those other things going on. You know, it was exactly during the same time that other places were still occupied. That a whole lot, especially in that area, you know, you had like Cyprus being occupied by Turkey in 1974. And then you had other things happening, such as the Cold War. You had all these things happening right after World War II. And this is the gates of hell was just one of those things. So you have to wonder, did they put us on a timeline from then to now? You know, kind of showing us, okay, the gates of hell are open. Everything that comes thereafter is pretty much on par with what they want to pull out. So you had the things happening in the 80s and the 90s. A lot of the 90s were the Gulf Wars, so kind of like the all around that area, right? Like around Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan. And then obviously you had that again in the 2000s after 9/11. And then what you're having right now is another level to all of that, you know, especially after 2020. So what are some other entryways to hell in addition to this one? And so this is a pretty fascinating one to me personally, because I do want to visit it at one point. I'm just not entirely sure about this entire guided tour thing, because I'm just not a person who really takes guided tours, but in order to see this, sure, perhaps. So there are several different ones, and they're all kind of around a similar area. So you have a few that are actually in Greece and in Italy. From my understanding, Mount Etna in Italy is also another entryway to the underworld, which could be another gates of hell, however you want to call that. You have a few entryways in the Peloponnese island in Greece, or half island, whatever you want to call that. And then I also believe I somewhere read, so Mount Etna on Sicily was considered to be an entryway to hell, especially in the medieval ages. The gates of hell were commonly depicted as jaws forming the hell mouth, which was simultaneously the entrance to hell and the mouth of a huge monster. In China, Fengdu has a long history of being a portal to hell. We already had the Turkmenistan one. The Waipio Valley contains an entrance to the lower world, which is in Hawaii, but it's now concealed with sand. Supposedly Hellam Township near York in Pennsylvania, USA, has been part of an urban legend or whatever, claiming it contains the 7 gates of hell. You have Mount Osori in northern Japan, and it's said to be an entrance to hell. Morgo, which is Tibetan, the Gateway of Darkness, was a caravan stop along Karakoram Pass. And I know I'm completely butchering all these names. I'm just reading them off. It's the valley to the east of Morgo. It's the furthest west in India. And this is also where the India-Chinese War was in 1962. Once again, around a similar time, you know, the 60s, the 70s, and beyond. Like, all of this is right after World War II, right after all these people were traumatized after one of the largest wars ever. And obviously World War II also kind of, you know, it impacted China, Japan, and many other countries. Kenya has a Hell's Gate National Park, which is an actual national park, supposedly because of the intense geothermal activity within its boundaries. And then in Nicaragua, you have Masaya Volcano, which is known as another gate of hell, and it's part of the first national park in this country. So yeah, you do have quite a few. There are many more, it appears, but these are a few. There's like something like St. Patrick's Purgatory in Ireland, the Well to Hell, and all of that. There's one in Greece which actually caught my attention. So this right here, once again, I don't know how you actually pronounce the name. Korician Cave. It's in the southern slopes of Mount Parnassus, and that's close to Delphi. So that's where the Oracle of Delphi is, and that's kind of what it looks like. So the Korician Cave is supposedly one of those entryways to the underworld, which leads to Hades or Hades, you know. So, and also the god Pan, right here, he's depicted as a half god between a goat and a man. So we already had this entire goat thing, right? Like, who's the goat? What's the goats? And how they're using the symbology of goats as a sacrifice, or kind of to reinforce more of their Masonic symbols, their Freemason symbols on us, on the people, but also on key players. And here's a goat. Here's one of the goats that they're using. They're actually using a half god, Pan, as someone who leads these people in this cave in Greece, through that, you know, kind of through that cave over this river into the underworld. So very interesting. And Mount Parnassus is close to Delphi, so that's a little bit outside of Athens. I think it's like 2 or 3 hours by car. Speaking about caves, so there are a few different sacred caves, but I was talking about being in a cave reality, which I'll briefly discuss in this video too. I just want to talk about a few sacred caves. So you have a cave in Belize, Aktun Tunichil Muknal, which is the cave of the stone sepulchre. It's nearly a mile underground, and you will reach the resting place of the Crystal Maiden, which is a complete female skeleton that sparkles from eons of crystal calcification. And it also contains Mayan pottery shards. Many are showing the kill hole intended to allow spirits to escape. So they're using a cave for a form of transferring these spirits over into another realm, possibly the hell realm or another one. You have the Elephanta caves in India on the Garapuri Islands, supposedly from the 5th century. And there's a representation of the creator, preserver, and destroyer aspect that you can find in there of the god Siva, one of the many gods that they have. Longmen caves, Dambula cave. So Longmen caves is in China, Dambula cave, Sri Lanka. Korician cave in Greece, place of worship of the god Pan and the nymphs. The Bronze Age Minoan caves in Crete. This is where Rhea gave birth to Zeus. and the Idaean cave where Rhea hid Zeus from his father Cronus. I want to have a video on Greek mythology, especially after being to those areas, specifically on Aphrodite and a few other ones. So not just Aphrodite, but also Aphrodite and the actual apple, the real apple. St. Paul's Grotto in Malta, which was named after one of the apostles because he was able to do miraculous cures and the locals viewed him as a god or whatever. St. Michael's Shrine in Italy, Grotte de Font de Gaume in France. Okay, so this is an interesting thing that I personally actually didn't know until I started doing more research on this, but one of the oldest graves, I think it's graves, not caves, but graves, is actually not in the Middle East, or it's not somewhere in South America or somewhere in Asia, but the oldest graves are actually in France, in Scotland, and in other parts of the UK somewhere. Also very interesting. So we're actually talking about caves where they found, I don't know if they found human remains, but they definitely, I don't know how they determined them to be the oldest, but they were able to do so. So maybe part of a different saga that we want to discuss. Okay, talking about the cave reality we are in. This is one of the many caves. I think it's the Son Doong cave in Vietnam. Don't really know how you pronounce that, so I'm just gonna read it off here as I see it. But I had this one on I think it was on my TikTok account, where they were basically saying they could see carved in steps in this one. So Hang Sundong, the world's largest cave. Sundong or Sundung is considered to be the largest cave in the world based on volume, and also the biggest cave in Vietnam. It was found by a jungle man in 1990. So it's pretty recent, right? In 2009, Hang Sundung was officially surveyed and measured by a British Vietnam cave expedition team. And they then announced it as the world's largest natural cave with a volume of 38.5 million cubic meters. The measurements were then accepted by a number of geologists and all of that. So they have another large cave with his Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky, but Sundong is the largest cave passage. So I guess they're competing still. Now Sundong has a total length of 9 kilometers, and the volume is, as already said, 38.5 million cubic meters, which makes it the largest natural cave on the planet. Whether or not we are on a planet, right? Which I already discussed in other videos. But basically, what's so fascinating about this cave, and I do think it's this particular cave, I can't really show any of the video footage that they have, so you have to look it up yourself. They have like a 40-minute long video on YouTube where they're basically showing how you already have carved in steps in this particular cave. So you just have to imagine, they just recently discovered it over the past 30 plus years or whatever, supposedly. And the moment you go down here, first of all, it's not even that dark, meaning there is still light reaching here. But they have these carved in steps out of nowhere. And then they have, I think there's like flowing water, all these things. The further you go in, the more you just see. So it's kind of like this underground world in an underground world, basically. And this is exactly what I saw when I was kind of reading on where are we exactly in this reality, because it's still about this entire, are we in flat Earth? Are we in globe Earth? Whatever. For me, from my understanding, what I already said in previous videos, we're in this cave reality. So we're kind of like in cave Earth or in a cave world still. Meaning they have several different artificial suns, several different of these artificial moons around us. So whatever moon you see here is not the same moon that you see in Australia, that you see in Europe and all these areas. And the same sun is most likely also not the same sun that you have in other areas throughout the world, which to me makes a lot of sense, because I do think the sun looks different in certain parts of the world. Let's put it that way. But no matter what, So what did I get? I think we had like 2 or 3 different suns somehow. And it was all these artificials. You kind of have to imagine it like LED lights. Whenever they replaced all our light bulbs from whatever they were before to now the LED, it completely changed everything, right? I personally can notice that because I actually had these really old light bulbs still up until recently. And the moment I started exchanging them, the moment I kind of felt, ooh, it's really disruptive to your system, to your body, to the body organism. It's just completely unnatural too, the way it shines. You know, the other one was warmer, it looked more like a fire almost, kind of like being at a fireplace sometimes. But these newer light bulbs, they're basically just another level of AI that they want in our lives. And I think it's just all part of converting every single aspect of our lives into AI, you know, having to have microphones all over our home with like the cell phones, the laptops, the tablets, everything, being spied on constantly through the Wi-Fi routers, which can also cause cancer because there's actually a cancer warning on most of our Wi-Fi routers, at least the one that I have for sure. All the EMF radiation, all the EMF pollution, radiating us constantly, bombarding us constantly through everywhere, everything, whatever, you know, like I already said in a different video, they're trying to really get to our minds, our thoughts, whatever we create our reality with. And so the light bulbs, I feel, are just another level to all of this. They really belong to this. But also it made sense seeing how maybe that's what the sun is. The sun is like basically another version of LED light that they kind of exchanged a few decades ago. Because some people are talking about how when they grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, or whatever, the sun was very different from what it is now. So maybe they just exchanged a light bulb or switched on a different type of sun. And I do think there are several different suns throughout wherever we are, you know, this cave reality, in my opinion, at least. So that's what I got. So this is just another metaphor or symbol for the cave reality. And they did discover this in Vietnam. So it's absolutely not impossible to live in a cave reality. I don't know, has anyone ever been here? Like, would be interesting to know, because I do know some people go to Vietnam and everything, or is it just like too hard to get to? But yeah, those are a few entryways to hell, entryways to the underworld. I'm sure there are many more. These are just one of the more important ones. What I also wanted to talk about is virtual prison sentences and how they're kind of messing with the perception of time. So let's just briefly discuss that in this video. So there was an article a few years ago, I'm not sure if it was in 2020 or 2021, where they basically want to have a prison sentence somehow through virtual reality. You're putting this virtual reality set on, an entire day goes by, and you've basically lived through 40 years in prison, or through a life sentence in prison, which is like 25 years and up. And so it's like, forget prisons, the future of punishment will be virtual. So just imagine the manipulation of time that they're already implying with this device, because if they're just disclosing it to us right now, obviously they've been having this for a really long time. And even if they're saying this might not yet exist, or that scientists or researchers are still working on it, if they're already mentioning it in a mainstream article, for sure they already have access to that. So basically they want to, whoever is going to jail for like a lifelong sentence, or like, let's say 25 to 40 years, they want to put this virtual reality set on them, or maybe even put you in a certain room. It wasn't really clear how they were going to do that, but kind of put you in this different reality with your head, with the headset. And then in reality, only a few hours have passed, depending on the sentence, right? Or maybe an entire day has passed. But in this virtual reality where you're doing the punishment, because it's virtual, it's basically 40 years or however long it is. And so I feel this is really just another symbol that they're using for time, and how time can be manipulated, right? And how they know that time is really just that, you know, it's like one of the biggest illusions that we have around us. Of course, it's real to a certain extent, but like I said, timing and aging, all of these things are a code. And so it's really kind of up to the people to crack that code, or to kind of see through that code. And so they're already showing you how they're doing that on their end, or kind of holding it in front of you, like kind of like holding that carrot in front of your nose, right? It's, oh yeah, oh yeah, let's just do these virtual prison sentences that are really only a day long, but then they come out, they're probably completely aged because they went through this in their head. And I also feel part of aging and part of time in general is really just that, you know, like a lot of worries and everything they put in our head, us thinking we're older than we really are. I mean, if you just kind of imagine maybe you were born like a year or two later than you actually were, and somehow your birth certificate got mixed up or something got mixed up at birth, right? Like it happens to some people. What would your reality be, right? Like, would you actually feel as old as you are? Or I don't know. I mean, for me personally, I actually did think about this when I was a bit younger. I was like, what if I'm actually a year older or younger than I really am? Like, how would I feel about my age? So it's just another thing to consider, how, you know, all of these things are programs and codes. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave it at that. If you have anything to add, just let me know. Thanks so much for tuning in, and see you in the next video. Subscribe to this channel if you're new, and more videos to come. Until then, bye guys. Have a good one.